Tell them the truth, Noah. Adrian Vale stood 3 feet away from me beneath the white lights of Hawthorne Academy's assembly hall, looking more frightened than I had ever seen him. That was saying something. I had once watched him discover a moth inside his tuxedo jacket and deliver what sounded like a final speech to humanity. Tonight, however, there was no performance in his face. The school board sat behind a long walnut table. Parents filled the first 6 rows. Students packed the balcony, their whispers moving through the old hall like wind through dry leaves. Beyond the tall windows, late February rain silvered the streets of Portland, Oregon. On the screen behind me was a photograph of our clubroom door. Someone had painted a red line through its brass sign, the unusual Perquest's Club. At the center sat Headmaster Howard Bell, 56, a gray-bearded beta who seemed to prefer emotions submitted in writing. "Mr. Bennett," he said, "you understand what is at risk. Your scholarship, the club's charter, possibly the enrollment of other students involved in this deception." My fingers closed around the edge of the podium. In my pocket lay a folded page written by a boy who technically no longer existed. On the stage beside me stood an alpha who loved me badly, beautifully, and with enough theatrical energy to power downtown Portland. Behind him sat 4 friends who had turned an unused music room into the first place I had ever called home. And in the front row, smiling as if he had already won, was the parent who had spent weeks trying to prove that an Omega like me had manipulated Hawthorne's most prominent students. I could protect my scholarship by accepting Richard Vale's version of events. I could let Adrian take the blame, exactly as he had offered, or I could admit that our club had made mistakes and ask the board to decide whether those mistakes mattered more than the students we had helped. Noah. Adrian's voice cracked around my name. The sound reached into me and caught another memory: fluorescent office lights, rain crawling down the window of a Seattle apartment, my 27-year-old hands trembling around a cold cup of coffee. Back then, no one had noticed when I disappeared. Now 5 boys had followed me into a storm. Adrian's golden brown hair had fallen across his forehead. His tie hung loose, and blue ink stained his cuff. He had brought a 12-page speech in my defense. I had stolen it before we entered. There are times when you must prevent the man you love from turning a disciplinary hearing into the final act of Les Miserables. This was one of those times. "The truth," I repeated. The microphone carried my voice into every corner of the hall. Adrian took 1 step toward me. I unfolded the page in my pocket, then the lights went out. Nearly 6 months earlier, my first life had ended in a Seattle apartment, and I had awakened during American history on a Monday. Honestly, it was terrible scheduling. Before I tell you how I reached that stage, consider following the channel for more tender, chaotic BL stories. Now let me return to the life I thought had used up every second chance. Before I became Noah Bennett, I was Ethan Miller, 27, an Omega, and a senior copywriter at Alder & Finch Communications in Seattle. Alder & Finch was a mid-sized communications agency occupying 3 polished floors near Amazon's South Lake Union campus and behaving as if it owned language itself. From our windows, I could see glass towers, construction cranes, and the gray shine of Lake Union. Inside, everything smelled of printer toner, expensive coffee, and ambition left too long in a sealed container. My manager, Colin Mercer, was a 38-year-old alpha who called everyone team and treated ideas like unattended umbrellas. Leave one near him, and it became his. On my last full day at work, Colin presented my campaign concept to a national retail client. He used my research, my central phrase, and even the joke I had tested on him the previous Friday. The client loved it. "That instinct is why Colin leads this department," our director said. Across the conference table, Colin gave me a warm, professional smile. Ethan helped organize some of the background material. Some. I stared at the reflection of the Space Needle in the rain-dark window and imagined throwing a dinner roll at his forehead. Not a hard roll. I was burned out, not lawless. Afterward, I caught him beside the elevators. You could have said it was my concept. Colin checked his Apple Watch before meeting my eyes. "You're talented, Ethan. But clients at this level need confidence. I presented the entire strategy to you, in a private room. That's different." His voice softened into the tone people used when discriminating politely. "You know how intense these meetings get. With your designation, the pressure. My designation wrote the campaign." The elevator opened. 2 coworkers inside suddenly became fascinated by their phones. Colin's smile thinned. "This defensiveness is exactly what I mean. He stepped into the elevator, taking my work and the conversation with him. The doors closed on my reflection. That evening, I walked toward Westlake Station beneath a wet cement sky. Buses sighed at the curb, and umbrellas moved around me, each heading somewhere that expected its owner. My phone vibrated. Need revisions on the Mercer deck by 8 a.m. You can handle it from home. He had named the file after himself. I laughed once quietly, because otherwise I might have cried at a crosswalk, and Seattle already had enough water. At home, I opened my laptop, then I closed it. I sat on the edge of my bed without removing my coat. On the bookshelf was my high school yearbook from a public school in Tacoma. I had not opened it in years. At 17, I had been quiet enough to disappear in a crowded hallway. I ate lunch in the library, attended no dances, and smiled when classmates joked that Omegas existed to marry well. Teachers called me mature. They meant convenient. I turned the pages. There I was in the back row of the debate club photograph, though I had quit after one meeting. My hair covered half my face. My shoulders curved inward as if apologizing for occupying 4 inches of glossy paper. "You idiot," I whispered to him. The boy in the photograph looked unconvinced. For the next several days, I stopped opening messages. My body had become heavy in a way sleep did not fix. I called in sick once, then again. Food tasted like cardboard. The sounds from the street seemed to happen on the other side of deep water. I did not want to hurt myself. I did not want anything dramatic at all. I simply had nothing left with which to move. On Sunday, rain tapped the window. I lay beneath a blanket in Friday's sweatshirt, my phone dark. Somewhere, a smoke alarm chirped twice and fell silent. I held the yearbook against my chest. If I could go back, I murmured, I'd do it differently. I would raise my hand. I would sit at the loud table. I would tell the first person who reduced me to my designation that their opinion was neither original nor useful. Mostly, I would stop treating endurance as a personality. The rain softened. My eyes closed. Exhaustion pulled me under so gently that I did not know I would never awaken in that life. Then someone struck my desk with a ruler. "Mr. Bennett." I jerked upright. Sunlight poured through tall windows. A map of the Louisiana Purchase glowed on a projector screen. 20 teenagers turned to stare at me. At the front of the room stood a woman in a green cardigan, holding a wooden ruler against my desk. Her badge read MS, Rebecca Sloan, History Department. "Would you like to rejoin us?" she asked. I looked down at my hands. They were slimmer, younger. There was blue ink on the side of my left thumb and a woven friendship bracelet around my wrist, though I could not remember anyone giving it to me. My heart began to pound. "Mr. Bennett?" On the desk lay a student identification card, Noah Bennett, age 18, Hawthorne Academy. The photograph showed a black-haired boy with gray eyes and a solemn mouth. After I unlocked the card's digital profile, an Omega designation appeared beneath the birth date, visible only to me and authorized school staff. I looked exactly like him. "I'm sorry," I said automatically, then I stopped. Those had been Ethan Miller's favorite words. I straightened in the chair. I missed the question. "Could you repeat it?" Miss Sloan lifted one eyebrow, then pointed toward the screen. "Why did opponents object to the Louisiana Purchase?" Luckily, death had not erased my education. They argued the Constitution didn't explicitly authorize the president to acquire territory, I said. Though political principles tend to become flexible when land is available at a discount. A laugh came from the back of the room. I turned. The boy at the last desk looked designed by a private school brochure. He was tall, broad-shouldered, golden brown-haired, and wore his navy blazer as if rules were decorative. His eyes looked amber near the windows. He smiled directly at me. Something unfamiliar moved beneath my ribs. Apparently reincarnation had preserved my poor judgment. By lunch, I had established 5 facts. First, Hawthorne Academy was a private school on a wooded Portland hill above the Willamette River. Second, Noah Bennett had transferred from Boise, Idaho, on a full academic scholarship. Third, he lived in the senior dormitory, while his guardian, an aunt in Denver, traveled for work. Fourth, his phone contained almost no personal messages. Fifth, the beautiful Alpha from history class was following me. I stopped beneath an archway overlooking the central courtyard. "Do you need something?" He nearly walked into me, recovered, and placed one hand over his heart as if I had accused him of treason. "I was giving you an opportunity to introduce yourself. You've been behind me for 6 minutes. I prefer a gradual entrance. Most stalkers do." His mouth opened. Then, to my surprise, he laughed. It was a bright, unguarded sound, too warm for the polished image he carried. Adrian Vale, he said, extending a hand. 18, senior, Alpha. President of the Unusual Request Club, founder of the Vale Winter Charity Showcase, and the only person in this school capable of organizing a formal event without beige tablecloths. I shook his hand. His palm was warm. Noah Bennett, 18, senior, Omega. Tired. Tired isn't a role. It was in my previous organization. His gaze sharpened, but I withdrew my hand before he could ask what I meant. Adrian came from a wealthy Portland family. His mother directed an arts foundation. His father sat on corporate boards. Adrian was popular, capable when entertained, and rumored to have rejected a recycling bin's worth of confessions. He fell into step beside me. You should join my club. No. You haven't heard what we do. The name contains both unusual and crests. At my age, that is enough information to avoid it. At your age, figure of speech, we crossed the courtyard. Red leaves scraped over the brick paths, and the air smelled of cedar and the tomato soup served in the dining hall. Students called greetings to Adrian. He answered each by name. I noticed that. Popular people often remembered faces. Adrian remembered details. How did your cello audition go, Maya? Tell your brother I found his missing sketchbook, Ben. Coach Ramirez said your ankle is healing, Sophie. Don't pretend you can run on it. His attention was extravagant, but not empty. At the dining hall doors, a broad boy stepped into our path. Scholarship transfer? He asked. His name, according to the embroidered athletic bag on his shoulder, was Grant Hollis. He was 18, an Alpha, the son of a Hawthorne alumnus, and the kind of student who had never been required to wonder whether a room wanted him in it. Grant had built his identity around protecting Hawthorne standards, a phrase that usually meant protecting standards that already favored him. That's me, I said. Grant's eyes dropped briefly to the silver Omega mark on my school badge. Hawthorne's standards are getting generous. The courtyard quieted by a degree. Ethan would have smiled. Ethan would have pretended not to understand. Ethan would have spent the rest of the day rewriting the conversation until the insult became his fault. I was too newly alive for that nonsense. I scored in the top 1% nationally, I said. If generosity concerns you, you should ask admissions why they made room for both of us. Someone choked on a laugh. Grant's face darkened. Adrian moved half a step forward, shoulders squaring. I touched 2 fingers to his sleeve. Don't, I murmured. Adrian looked down at my hand. The anger left his face so quickly it was almost comical. Grant muttered something about arrogance and walked away. I was about to defend you, Adrian said. I noticed. It would have been devastating. To whom? I hadn't decided yet. I released his sleeve. The navy fabric retained a small crease where my fingers had been. Adrian stared at it as if it were a handwritten confession. That should have warned me. Instead, 20 minutes later, I followed him to the clubroom. The club occupied an old West Wing music room with arched windows, a faded piano, mismatched sofas, an oak table, and enough plants to suggest someone had annexed a greenhouse. 4 boys looked up when we entered. The first was Felix Carter, 18, a slim beta with rectangular glasses and a paperback titled The Psychology of Lasting Romance. He had never been on a date, a fact I learned within 7 minutes, but advised everyone as if love had appointed him regional manager. Beside the windows stood Lucas Brooks, 18, an alpha over 6 feet tall with dark hair, quiet eyes, and the intimidating build of someone usually cast as security guard number 1. He wore a flour-smudged apron and was arranging lemon cakes beside several pots of basil. On the sofa sat Milo Parker, 17, a beta with copper curls and a video camera balanced on one knee. Milo ran Hawthorne's student media channel, collected rumors with professional efficiency, and regarded privacy as an interesting historical custom. Finally, at the table was Julian Foster, 18, an alpha and student council vice president. His uniform was immaculate, his posture perfect, and he was filling out a facilities request titled Supervise Educational Use of the Rooftop. The coil of rope beside his chair suggested the word educational was under strain. Ms. Rebecca Sloan, 41, taught American history and served as the club's faculty advisor. Her official job was to approve requests involving safety, health records, money, or family conflict. Adrian described her unofficial job as keeping compassion from being defeated by paperwork. She described her job as preventing Adrian from purchasing a fog machine with school funds. I found him, Adrian announced. Milo raised the camera. The mysterious transfer student? A new member. A visitor, I corrected. Felix studied Adrian, then me, then the faint wrinkle on Adrian's sleeve. Interesting. Don't, Adrian warned. I haven't said anything. You adjusted your glasses with romantic intent. Lucas silently offered me a lemon cake. I took it. Whatever else happened, I respected competent recruitment. Adrian swept toward a brass box on the wall. Students submit problems anonymously. We solve what the administration can't, won't, or would make unbearably dull. Last week, Milo said, we located a stolen French horn. Misplaced, Julian corrected. It was in the choir director's Subaru. The week before that, Felix added, we designed a statistically optimized apology. It failed, Lucas said. His voice was deep and unexpectedly gentle. Felix frowned. The recipient's emotional variables were irrational. Adrian opened the request box and removed a folded note. As he read it, the performance drained from his expression. He handed the paper to me. The handwriting was cramped and careful. I eat lunch alone behind the library because people make comments about my scent blockers. I know this isn't a real problem. Could someone sit with me just once? I can pay. The lemon cake turned heavy in my hand. I saw a library in Tacoma, a 17-year-old Omega unwrapping the same sandwich at the same hidden table. I saw a Seattle office break room where conversations stopped when I entered. No one pays, I said. Adrian watched me. No, and sitting with him once won't fix it. No, he said again softer. I placed the note on the table. Then we find out what will. Adrian's smile was small this time. Real. Is that a yes? I looked around the sunlit room. At Felix already opening a notebook. Lucas wrapping another cake. Milo lowering his camera without being asked. And Julian calmly hiding the rooftop rope beneath the table. My second life had been less than a day old. Being sensible had accomplished very little in my first one. It's a trial period, I said. Adrian offered his hand again. Welcome to the chaos, Noah Bennett. When our fingers met, his thumb brushed the inside of my wrist. The touch was probably accidental. My pulse, disloyal and easily impressed, behaved as if it were not. The lonely student was Sam Rivera, a 16-year-old Omega sophomore, with careful brown curls and a talent for architectural drawing. We found him the next day behind Hawthorne's library, sitting on a low stone wall beneath dripping maple branches. Adrian had proposed arriving as a marching band. I had reduced the plan to sandwiches. Your approach lacks spectacle, he whispered, as we crossed the lawn. Your approach would make him transfer schools. People enjoy music, not when trapped against a wall by trombones. Sam looked ready to flee when he saw 6 older students approaching. Lucas solved the problem by holding out a paper bag. Cinnamon roll, he asked. Sam stayed. We did not interrogate him. Milo left his camera behind. Julian ignored his wet uniform, and Adrian stopped Felix's social theory with half a sandwich. For 10 minutes, we discussed Luca's failed strawberries, a teacher's Oregon Trail obsession, and whether Adrian's hair naturally looked that dramatic. It does, Adrian said. The burden is considerable. Sam laughed before he could stop himself. Only then did I ask, who comments on your blockers? His shoulders folded. A few guys in chemistry. They say if I need medication to hide my scent, I shouldn't attend a mixed designation school. Names? Adrian asked, all humor gone. Sam stared at his shoes. I don't want a whole thing. Adrian specializes in whole things, I said. But he can be supervised. Adrian looked offended. Sam smiled again. We learned that Sam loved stage design but had avoided drama club because the chemistry students worked backstage. He had been hiding not only at lunch but from the one activity he wanted. I understood that particular theft. Sometimes people never touched you and still managed to take rooms away. What if the room changed? I asked. Our solution required everyone. Milo announced an open design competition for Hawthorne's winter play. Julian persuaded the director to judge anonymous sketches. Lucas helped Sam build a model, while Felix coached his presentation with an alarming number of flashcards. Adrian volunteered to handle the chemistry students. No duels, I told him. This is Oregon, Noah, not 1820. That was not a no. In the end, Adrian simply sat beside Sam at lunch for 3 days. His popularity made the hidden stone wall suddenly visible. On the 4th day, other drama students joined them. When one chemistry boy made a comment, Adrian smiled and asked him to repeat it for Milo's camera. He declined. Funny how prejudice sometimes developed stage fright. Sam won. His translucent paper forest changed color beneath the lights. During rehearsal, he gave instructions with paint on his cheek and no apology in his posture. Afterward, he handed us a card. Thank you for sitting with me until I remembered how to stand. Adrian read it twice. On our way back to the clubroom, rain began without warning. Everyone ran ahead beneath the covered walkway, but I stopped under a cedar tree, struck by the smell of wet pavement. Seattle returned all at once. The office elevator, Colin's smile, my dark apartment, the weight of the yearbook on my chest. Air caught halfway into my lungs. The campus blurred. I pressed rough bark beneath my palm, but my body had decided I was somewhere else. Noah? Adrian's voice came from too far away. I'm fine. The oldest and least convincing lie in the English language. He stepped into the rain with me. Water darkened his blazer and gathered on his eyelashes. Look at me, he said. I tried. His face doubled. Tell me 5 things you can see. I blinked. You know grounding techniques? My mother has anxiety. 5 things. The cedar, the science building, your ridiculous shoes. They're Italian. That makes them internationally ridiculous. His mouth softened. 2 more. A red umbrella, your eyes. 4 things you can feel. Rain bark, my wet socks, my voice shook, your hand. He had wrapped his fingers around mine, not tightly, just enough to give my body a border. 3 things you can hear. By the time we reached one, the past had loosened its grip. I leaned back against the cedar. Adrian remained in front of me, his hand still holding mine between us. You can ask, I said. Would you answer? Probably not. Then I'll ask later. He took off his blazer and draped it around my shoulders, though he was equally soaked. For now, I'm staying. The others are waiting. They have Lucas cinnamon rolls. They'll survive. Your hair is collapsing. Adrian touched it in alarm. Then he saw the corner of my mouth lift. Cruel, he said quietly. I offer emotional support, and you attack my most vulnerable feature. I laughed. It came out thin, but it was real. He looked at me as if I had given him something precious. That was the first moment I understood Adrian's drama was not vanity. It was a bridge. He made everything brighter and louder, because silence had frightened him long before I arrived. My fingers tightened around his. His gaze dropped to our joined hands. Neither of us moved. The bell rang across campus, deep and resonant. Students hurried under the arches. Rain whispered through the cedar needles. Adrian lifted my hand and pressed his forehead briefly against my knuckles. It was not a kiss. It felt more intimate than one. You're safe here, he murmured. For one dangerous second, I believed him completely. By October, Hawthorne had painted itself in copper and red. The clubroom smelled of Lucas's apple bread and the lavender polish Milo used on his camera lenses. I had acquired a chair by the window, a mug labeled Vice President of Common Sense, and 5 people who complained if I skipped lunch. I had also established 3 operating principles. Meetings before 9 in the morning were a violation of human dignity. Any problem solvable by one email did not deserve a committee, and physical errands belonged to people whose resurrection had not left them suspicious of stairs. Felix called this laziness. Julian called it delegation. I called Julian correct. I had also acquired Adrian. He appeared beside me between classes, stole the blue candies from my trail mix, and sent midnight messages marked urgent that usually concerned his inability to choose a scarf. He called me his executive advisor. Milo called me his emotional support Omega. I called Milo a future defendant. Our next major request came from Elliot Ward, an 18-year-old beta and violinist. His parents had arranged a weekend dinner with the son of a family friend and refused to hear that Elliot was not interested. I need someone to pretend to be my boyfriend, he said at the club table, just long enough to make the point. Adrian leaned forward. A performance-based mission, at last. I thought Noah could do it, Elliot said. Silence fell. Adrian smiled. I had seen him smile at Grant Hollis before. It was the expression of a prince deciding which remote island would best suit a rival's transfer. Noah? He asked. We share calculus. Elliot's parents know me. How convenient. Felix adjusted his glasses. Observable signs include tightened jaw, rigid posture, and excessive politeness. I am not jealous, Adrian said. I didn't say jealous. Your eyebrows did. We held the fake date at a cafe in downtown Portland near Powell's City of Books. Elliot's parents planned to meet him there before dinner. I wore a charcoal sweater. Elliot brought me a small bouquet, because apparently his mother required evidence supported by props. Adrian attended in a baseball cap and sunglasses. He sat 2 tables away with Milo, pretending to read a menu upside down. Your club president is watching us, Elliot whispered. He's conducting quality control. He looks like he wants to challenge my coffee. Elliot's parents arrived, saw the flowers, and understood quickly. The conversation remained civil but not easy. His father said they had only wanted him to meet someone suitable. Elliot's hand tightened around his cup. I shouldn't need a boyfriend, real or fake, for you to hear the word no, he said. I asked Noah to come because I was afraid you would turn my answer into a negotiation. His mother's expression softened first. His father remained quiet long enough for the cafe music to become uncomfortable, then agreed to cancel the dinner. Nobody left completely satisfied, but Elliot left with his choice intact. For our first conversation, that was enough. The mission might have ended peacefully if Elliot had not taken my hand across the table while thanking me. A glass shattered behind us. Adrian stood over a puddle of iced tea. Slippery glass, he said. You were holding it, Milo observed. Outside the cafe, Elliot left with his parents. Adrian marched half a block in silence. You're sulking, I said. I don't sulk. Your shoulders are sulking independently. We stopped beneath an old theater marquee while traffic painted Broadway red and gold. Adrian removed his sunglasses. I object to club resources being used without adequate oversight. I'm not a club resource. His face changed. The joke vanished, and the space between us cooled. You're right, he said immediately. That was disrespectful. I had expected an argument. Easy apologies were rare in my old life. They usually arrived wrapped in explanations until the injured person had to provide comfort. Adrian stood with rain curling his hair, waiting. Thank you, I said. I was jealous. His ears turned pink, not because I think I own any part of you. I just hated how natural you looked holding his hand. The city noise seemed to lower around us. It was acting. You're disturbingly talented. Would it help if I said I noticed you the entire time? His eyes lifted to mine. I should not have said it, or perhaps I should have said it sooner. Why? He asked. Your menu was upside down. He groaned and covered his face. I laughed, caught his wrist, and lowered his hand. We stood suddenly close. Damp wool brushed my sleeve. His cedar and clove alpha scent rose beneath the school-required neutralizer. His gaze moved to my mouth. Mine did the same. Then Milo's voice came through the tiny radio clipped inside Adrian's coat. If you two kiss, please rotate 15 degrees toward the streetlight. We sprang apart. Adrian pulled out the radio. Milo Parker, enjoy your final day with school Wi-Fi. Nonviolent threats only, I reminded him. Fine. Begin planning your transfer to a school without Wi-Fi. Across the street, Milo ran. Adrian chased him. I followed at a dignified walking pace because resurrection had not improved my cardio. The almost kiss stayed with me all night, bright as the theater lights reflected in rain. The Unusual Requests Club needed money. Adrian discovered this after ordering velvet curtains, custom stationery, and a brass bell engraved with "Surface is an art." Julian placed the invoices in front of him. We have $11.34. How can generosity be so expensive? Adrian asked. The curtains were $600. They established trust. We decided to operate a relationship advice cafe during Hawthorne's Fall Festival. Portland families filled the campus on a crisp Saturday in November. Strings of lights crossed the courtyard. Food trucks lined the athletic field, and music floated from the gym. Felix designed compatibility questionnaires. Lucas baked maple scones. Milo advertised live romantic demonstrations, a phrase none of us approved because he posted it before asking. Julian built a spinning wheel of scenarios. At noon, a freshman spun it and landed on Confess to Your Best Friend. Milo pointed at Adrian and me. Demonstration couple. Absolutely not, I said. Adrian was already walking toward the small stage. The public requires education, Noah. The public can Google. But the crowd began chanting our names, largely because Milo had bribed the drama club with scones. I joined Adrian under an arch of paper leaves. He bowed over my hand so extravagantly that 3 parents applauded before we began. Keep it simple, I whispered. I have never done anything simple in my life. That, unfortunately, was true. He started with a comic speech about my ruthless editing of his plans, my refusal to appreciate Italian shoes, and my habit of falling asleep on the club sofa with a book over my face. The crowd laughed. Then his voice changed. Before Noah came, he said, looking only at me, I thought being needed was the same as being loved. I solved problems so people would have a reason to stay. Then he walked into our room, ate Luca's last lemon cake, and saw through every performance I had. The courtyard seemed to disappear. It was offered to me, I whispered. Adrian smiled faintly. He never asks me to be less. He only asks me to be honest. His hand found mine, and the honest thing is... He stopped. For the first time since I had known him, Adrian Vale forgot his line. His thumb trembled against my knuckles. I could have rescued the scene with a joke. Instead, I squeezed his hand. "I know," I said softly. His eyes widened. The crowd became very quiet. Then a goat ran through the cafe wearing Hawthorne's mascot ribbon. No school festival truly respects emotional timing. The goat belonged to a petting zoo vendor. It knocked over Felix's questionnaires, stole a scone, and led Adrian into a pursuit across the courtyard. Milo captured everything. The resulting video received 40,000 views, but views did not pay invoices. The attention doubled our festival donations, and the Parent Association matched the total after Ms. Sloan submitted a painfully respectable budget. Together, those funds kept the club open for the year. Adrian and I did not discuss what happened on stage. We became more careful instead, which was worse. Our shoulders touched during meetings and neither moved. He left hot chocolate on my desk. I fixed his tie before presentations, lingering at his collar while he forgot to breathe. Sometimes I woke on the club sofa beneath his coat and found him nearby, pretending to read. We hovered at the edge of something warm and terrifying. I had been given a second life. Wanting too much from it felt ungrateful, as if happiness might notice the accounting error and correct itself. So I told myself friendship was enough. My heart, which had recently demonstrated a taste for drama kings, filed a formal objection. The request arrived on the first Monday after Thanksgiving. Someone posted my designation records online. People keep asking if I lied about being a beta. I don't want my parents called. Please make it stop. The note was signed DM. Milo found the student before lunch. Daniel Morris, 17, an Omega Junior on Hawthorne's robotics team. Daniel had presented as an Omega late and had continued using the neutral designation printed on his old activities page. Someone accessed a health office scheduling list and spread a screenshot through an anonymous student account. When Daniel entered the clubroom, he held his backpack against his chest like armor. "I didn't lie," he said before sitting down. "I just didn't announce it." "You weren't required to," I replied. The fluorescent light above him hummed. For a second, it became the light above Alder and Finch's conference table. I heard Colin telling me clients needed confidence. I saw coworkers turning toward their phones while an elevator carried him away. Daniel asked, "Will colleges see this?" "Not if we move quickly," Julian said. We divided the work. Milo documented the posts without repeating them publicly. Julian reviewed Hawthorne's privacy policy. Felix helped Daniel write a brief statement that did not sound defensive. Lucas stayed with him during robotics practice. Miss Sloan reported the breach, arranged a meeting with the school counselor, and made certain Daniel would not have to repeat the story to 6 different adults. I took everything else. Within 3 days, I had missed 2 lunches, slept 4 hours, and created a timeline connecting the anonymous account to the school media network. I answered messages at 2 a.m. and rewrote Daniel's statement 17 times. On Thursday, Adrian closed my laptop. "Open it," I said. "No, this isn't one of your decorative emergencies. You're shaking." I looked down. My fingers trembled against the table. "Too much coffee. You hate coffee." He was right. Noah preferred tea. Ethan had consumed coffee because exhaustion was easier to disguise when everyone held the same paper cup. Daniel needs this solved. Daniel needs all of us. You need sleep. I have handled worse. Adrian's expression went still. That does not make this acceptable. I reached for the laptop. He caught my wrist, not forcefully, but with enough warmth to interrupt the cold machinery of my thoughts. "Why are you acting like the world ends if you rest?" he asked. Because my first life had narrowed until I mistook the walls for my own shape. Because if I stopped being useful, people might discover I was an administrative error in a dead boy's body. You wouldn't understand. It was cruel. I knew it as soon as I said it. Adrian released me. He left without a speech. That frightened me more than anger would have. The next afternoon, Daniel's situation worsened. The anonymous account posted that the club was protecting him because I was an Omega too. Grant Hollis repeated it in the dining hall, loudly enough for half the senior class to hear. "Maybe Bennett wants special treatment for all of them," he said. I put down my tray. Before I could respond, Daniel stood at the neighboring table. His face was pale, but his voice carried. Noah never asked for special treatment. He asked the school to follow its own privacy rules. If you think that's special, maybe you've been receiving too little fairness. Milo, standing near the drink station, lowered his camera. This moment belonged to Daniel. Grant looked around for support and found none. Lucas rose silently behind Daniel, enormous and flour-dusted from culinary club. Felix folded his arms. Julian took out a notepad with the terrifying calm of someone recording a policy violation. Grant left. No one cheered. Daniel did not need his worst week turned into entertainment. We simply made room at our table. He sat. Adrian's chair remained empty. I found him after school beneath the covered bus shelter at the bottom of Hawthorne Hill. Rain tapped the curved roof. The last activity bus had gone, leaving Adrian alone on the bench with his tie undone and both hands around a paper cup he had forgotten to drink from. I was wrong, I said. A historic day. His tone was light. His eyes were not. I sat beside him. Wet cedar and distant traffic scented the air. Cars passed below us on Macadam Avenue, their lights sliding across the shelter glass. In my old school, I began, I learned that being quiet made people comfortable. Later, in another place, I became good at carrying work no one thanked me for. Another place? I'm not ready to explain everything. All right, no demand, no wounded performance. I stared at my hands. I lived as if usefulness were rent. If I stopped paying, I thought everyone would ask me to leave. Adrian's shoulder touched mine. You can be useless with me, he said. I looked at him. That came out wrong. Spectacularly. I mean, you don't have to earn your chair, or your mug, or my... He stopped, throat moving. You don't have to earn me. The rain-filled evening seemed to inhale. I leaned my head against his shoulder. Adrian went perfectly still. Then his cheek rested on my hair. I'm sorry, I whispered. Accepted. You can make a speech now. I prepared one on the walk here, but the mood has become delicate. Tragic. His fingers found mine between us. Noah? When you're ready to explain, I'll believe you. That promise would matter sooner than either of us knew. The school traced the leak to a student assistant who had photographed a health office screen as a joke. Hawthorne revoked his access, notified affected families, requested removal of the posts, and assigned consequences and privacy training. The counselor asked Daniel what support he wanted. He declined a public address and instead joined Milo's campaign about consent and designation privacy. The campaign's first poster read, "Curiosity is not clearance." Grant stopped making comments after Julian calmly informed him that 3 documented violations could affect his eligibility for student leadership. Funny revenge was better than bitter revenge. It required less energy and produced excellent facial expressions. I began sleeping again. Adrian began sending me a moon emoji at 11 every night. If I did not reply with another moon, he called. I complained about this system constantly. I never once ignored it. December brought cold blue mornings and lights along the dormitory eaves. Lucas filled the clubroom with gingerbread. Felix attempted to chart our romantic progression until I threatened to use the chart as kindling. Adrian grew brighter as winter deepened. That should have warned me too. He organized a charity showcase at the Portland Art Museum and smiled through calls from his father. Richard Vale, 49, was an alpha investor whose affection arrived disguised as strategy. His family had funded Hawthorne's performing arts wing, giving his opinions more weight at school than any parents should carry. I met him at the showcase. "No, Bennett," he said, recognizing me from the scholarship file Adrian had accused him of reading. "You're the student Adrian talks about." Adrian nearly dropped a tray of sparkling cider. "Father, constantly," Richard added. I looked at Adrian. Constantly? He exaggerates. It's hereditary. Richard's smile did not reach his eyes. Adrian has always collected projects. I trust this club won't distract him from his future. The club is part of my future, Adrian said. It is an extracurricular activity. The words landed quietly, but Adrian's fingers tightened around the tray. I took 2 glasses from it before they could spill. It's also provided documented support to 32 Hawthorne students. Richard looked at me with new attention. Loyal, accurate. Adrian hid a smile. The showcase succeeded. Richard shook hands while Adrian performed confidence beneath chandeliers until no one could see his exhaustion. 3 days later, he dissolved the club. We arrived to find the brass sign removed and the room nearly empty. The plants remained because Lucas had threatened consequences, though he never specified which ones. Adrian stood by the window. My schedule next semester won't allow it, he said. College applications, family obligations. You understand. No, Milo said. Felix looked genuinely furious. Lucas folded his arms. Julian watched Adrian with the cool grief of an old friend who recognized the pattern. I asked, "When did your father threaten to withdraw funding from the school?" Adrian flinched. Julian exhaled. Yesterday morning. Traitor, Adrian muttered. You're welcome. Richard had told the headmaster that Adrian's club encouraged inappropriate activism and distracted prominent students. He wanted Adrian focused on Yale applications and the family foundation. So you decided for all of us, I said. I'm protecting you. From having a choice? His chin lifted. You were fine before this club. The room went silent. He regretted it immediately. I could have answered cruelly. Instead, I looked at the empty space where my chair had been. No, I said. I was very good at looking fine. I left before he saw how deeply the words had cut. That night Adrian disappeared from the dorm. Julian knew where he would be. We found him in Hawthorne's auditorium, sitting in the dark with a single aisle light burning. Of course the drama king hid on a stage. Even his breakdowns understood branding. The others waited outside. I walked down the aisle alone. If you came to convince me, Adrian said, I have an extremely persuasive refusal prepared. I came to hear it. He looked up, startled. I sat in the front row. Go ahead. He stood. For a moment I thought he might truly perform, then his shoulders dropped. My father is right about one thing, he said. People stay when I'm useful. When I host, help, introduce, arrange, rescue. Everyone wants Adrian Vale, but if I cannot give them something, you think they'll discover there's no one underneath. His face tightened. I stepped onto the stage. You solve other people's problems before they can decide whether to love you without the service. And you solve them before anyone can decide whether you deserve a place. Annoying, isn't it? Deeply. We stood an arm's length apart, two experts in earning affection, suddenly unemployed. If you stop being useful, I said, Lucas will still bake too much. Felix will still give terrible advice. Milo will still violate several privacy laws before breakfast. Julian will still forge miracles out of administrative forms. And you? His voice was almost nothing. I reached for his hand. I'll still come looking for you in dark auditoriums. His eyes shone. Why? Because I loved him. The knowledge arrived whole, without thunder. It felt like recognizing a house by the light in its windows. I was not ready to say it. Because you matter when no one is watching, I said. Adrian bowed his head over our joined hands. His shoulders shook once. I stepped closer and he folded around me. He was taller, but grief made him seem young. I held him with one hand between his shoulder blades and the other at the back of his neck. His breath warmed my collar. I'm sorry, he whispered. You should be. My mug was in that room. He laughed against my shoulder, wet and startled. The club reopened the next morning. Julian found that only the faculty advisor or headmaster could dissolve it. Adrian lacked jurisdiction. Milo printed the regulation on a banner. Lucas returned my chair. Felix wrote reconciliation through a touchmanica on the board until everyone threw paper at him. Adrian entered last, carrying my mug like a ceremonial object. President of common sense, he said, placing it before me. Your kingdom awaits. I'm not vice president. You have been performing the duties for months. That sounds like unpaid labor. He leaned down until his mouth was beside my ear. Name your compensation. Warmth climbed my neck, a chair that doesn't wobble. Coward, he whispered, smiling. In January, I found Noah Bennett's journal. It was hidden beneath a loose drawer in my dorm desk, wrapped in a Boise Public Library tote bag. The first pages contained class schedules and scholarship calculations. Then the handwriting grew smaller. Noah had been lonely long before I arrived. His parents had died in a highway accident when he was 14. No violence was described, only the clean, unbearable fact of absence. His aunt cared for him but traveled constantly. At his previous school, Noah hid his designation, avoided clubs, and counted the months until graduation. The woven bracelet around my wrist appeared in one entry. Noah had made it from blue and yellow thread the night before school began. If I wear something bright tomorrow, he wrote, maybe I'll remember that being noticed is not the same as being in danger. He had researched Hawthorne's unusual request club. He had saved Milo's videos. On the final written page, dated the night before my awakening, he wrote, tomorrow I will walk into that room, even if they laugh. I want one memory that belongs to courage instead of fear. Beneath it was another sentence. I wish there were a version of me brave enough to live this life. I sat on the floor until sunset. Had I replaced him? Had my wish answered itself by erasing another lonely Omega? The thought hollowed me out. For a week I attended class and answered Adrian's messages while moving like an actor who had forgotten the scene. Adrian noticed on day 2. He waited until day 7 to ask, which may have been the greatest demonstration of restraint in recorded history. He found me in the greenhouse behind the science building, sitting among Luca's winter herbs. Warm, damp air fogged the glass. Rosemary scented my hands. You said you would believe me, I told him. I will. So I told him. I described Seattle, Alder and Finch, the yearbook, the days of exhaustion, and waking beneath Miss Sloane's ruler. I told him my name had been Ethan Miller. I told him I remembered being 27 and dying without intending to die. Finally, I showed him Noah's journal. Adrian read the last page. For a long time, only the greenhouse heater made sound. Say something, I whispered. I'm deciding which part to react to first. The reincarnation seems important. You worked for a man who named your file after himself. Despite everything, I laughed. Adrian knelt in front of me. Do you think you stole his life? I don't know. What do you remember from before you woke? I closed my eyes. A friendship bracelet. The taste of peppermint gum. The instinctive route from history class to the dorm. A fondness for tomato soup that did not belong to Ethan. Fragments. Maybe Noah didn't vanish. Adrian touched the bracelet around my wrist. Maybe he opened a door. Maybe you are two wishes meeting in the same place. That isn't scientific. Neither is dying in Seattle and waking in Oregon 9 years younger. Fair point. He took my face between his hands. His palms were warm, thumbs resting beneath my eyes. Whatever name you had, the person who argues with my budgets, protects frightened students, and insults my shoes is real. My breath trembled. I'm afraid I'll wake up, I confessed. Then I'll make every day difficult to mistake for a dream. You already do. He smiled. I covered one of his hands with mine. Adrian, yes? I think I'm in love with you. His entire body went still. You think? I was hoping for a graceful response. You gave me uncertainty. Fine, I'm in love with you. Adrian stood so quickly, he struck his shoulder on a hanging planter. Lucas's time swung wildly above us. I stared. He pressed a hand to his shoulder. The greenhouse attacked me during the most important moment of my life. Are you all right? No. Say it again. I stood and caught the front of his sweater. I love you. This time he kissed me. There was no audience. His mouth touched mine carefully, and the world narrowed to warm breath, rosemary, and his thumb along my cheek. I rose onto my toes as he drew me closer. The kiss deepened, sweet enough to ache. When we parted, his forehead rested against mine. For the record, he whispered, I have loved you since you called my shoes internationally ridiculous. That was our first day. I'm decisive. You spent 4 months not kissing me. I'm also respectful. You followed me across campus, romantically observant. I kissed him again to stop the defense. It worked for nearly a minute. Dating Adrian changed less than expected and more than I was prepared for. He still stole my candy, except now he kissed my temple afterward as if affection legalized theft. I still edited his plans, except he negotiated by wrapping his arms around my waist and reading over my shoulder. We bickered through meetings while holding hands beneath the table. Our friends were unbearable. Felix presented a relationship forecast. Milo released a video titled President finally confirms what everyone knew. Lucas baked a cake shaped like 2 badly proportioned hearts. Julian collected $20 from a betting pool and refused to apologize. Happiness settled into ordinary places. Adrian outside calculus, his scarf around my neck, my head on his chest during a movie. Each moment seemed too small to fear, which was how I learned to trust it. Then Richard Vale filed a formal complaint against the club. He claimed we had impersonated students, interfered in family matters, mishandled private information, and used school resources without proper oversight. Some accusations contained truth bent at strategic angles. The fake date looked questionable on paper. Milo's recordings created legitimate concerns. Julian's creative interpretation of facilities rules did not help. Headmaster Bell suspended the club pending a board hearing. The brass sign was removed. Rumors spread that I had influenced Adrian through an Omega bond. No such bond existed between us, but facts rarely slowed a satisfying rumor. Richard offered me a private solution, retain my scholarship, distance myself from Adrian, and state that club decisions had been made under Adrian's authority. We met in a hotel cafe beside Pioneer Courthouse Square. Holiday lights still hung in the trees outside. You're intelligent, Richard said. You understand Adrian's attention can be overwhelming. It can. He looked relieved. Last week he sent a string quartet to my chemistry lab because I forgot our 1-month anniversary. Richard blinked. It was not our anniversary. He invented it. Then you see my concern. I see that your son is dramatic. I don't see that he is dishonest. Richard folded his hands. Affection feels permanent at 18. So does loneliness. He studied me. What do you want? In my first life, powerful men always assumed resistance was negotiation. For you to attend the hearing, I said, and listen when Adrian speaks. That's all? No. I also want reimbursement for the velvet curtains, but I'm prioritizing. I left him with the bill. Our defense took 2 weeks. Felix organized student testimony by consent and outcome. Lucas offered the culinary room as a quiet writing space. Milo secured permission for retained footage and deleted the rest, a painful but necessary evolution. Julian matched every accusation to policy and proved our brass box had been filling a real institutional gap. Adrian wanted to take responsibility for everything. Absolutely not, I told him. My family caused this, and our club made mistakes together. Your scholarship is not permission to use me as a shield or treat me like glass. He paced the empty clubroom. I am trying to protect the man I love. The words still made warmth bloom beneath my ribs. Then stand beside him, I said, not in front of him. He stopped pacing. That was very good, he admitted. You may use it in your speech. I already have 12 pages. You have 3 minutes. His face registered personal betrayal. On the night of the hearing, rain covered Portland. The assembly hall filled beyond capacity. Sam Rivera sat with the drama club. Daniel Morris sat beside the robotics team. Elliot Ward arrived with both parents. Sloane sat behind our evidence binders. She testified that she had approved sensitive cases, reported Daniel's privacy breach, and asked Hawthorne to create a confidential support channel. We had crossed procedural lines, she admitted, but never operated without adult oversight. Richard Vale occupied the front row. Headmaster Bell called my name. I walked to the podium carrying Noah's journal page in my pocket. The board asked whether Adrian had pressured me into club activities. They asked whether our relationship impaired our judgment. One parent suggested an Omega scholarship student might feel obligated to please wealthy alpha classmates. Adrian rose. Tell them the truth, Noah. That was where my memory of the opening returned. His loose tie, the blue ink on his cuff, the fear in his face. I unfolded the page. The lights went out. Someone in the balcony yelped. Emergency lights glowed red along the aisles. Do not panic, Headmaster Bell called. This is not us, Julian said from the second row, which was not as reassuring as he intended. Milo's phone flashlight clicked on, followed by dozens more. The dark hall filled with white points, a low constellation held in students' hands. Lucas moved beside an elderly board member to guide him safely. Felix protected the evidence binders with his body. Adrian reached the podium and found my hand. Are you all right? He whispered. I was. For once, darkness did not mean being alone. The microphone still worked on emergency power. I faced the hall lit by phones. The truth, I began, is that Hawthorne failed students before our club ever broke a rule. The whispers stopped. I did not reveal reincarnation. That truth belonged to me and Adrian, not to a board looking for procedural answers. Instead, I told them what mattered. I told them I knew what it meant to make oneself smaller for other people's comfort. I described Sam's hidden lunches, Daniel's stolen privacy, Elliot's unheard refusal, and the dozens of requests students had been too afraid to bring to adults. I touched the journal page in my pocket. I could not explain its author, but I could honor the sentence that had brought me here. Someone once wrote, I want one memory that belongs to courage instead of fear. Tonight, I'm asking the school to give every frightened student the chance to make that memory before fear becomes his entire education. We made mistakes, I said. We sometimes chose enthusiasm over procedure. One of us filmed too much. Fair, Milo called softly. One of us believes forms are puzzles rather than boundaries. Julian inclined his head. Our president thinks velvet curtains are a public service. Laughter moved through the hall, but no student paid us. No one was required to disclose a designation. When we learned better, we changed. If you close the club, please replace it with something stronger. Give students a confidential place to ask for help. Train us, supervise us. Just don't pretend the request will disappear because the box does. I looked at Richard, and don't mistake an alpha standing beside an omega for an alpha controlling him. Adrian's fingers tightened around mine. The main lights returned. The screen flickered on. Milo displayed messages from students we had helped. I joined drama club. My parents finally listened. I went back to robotics. I don't eat alone anymore. Felix presented the documentation. Julian proposed a revised charter with faculty oversight and privacy requirements. Milo accepted restrictions on recording. Lucas offered the greenhouse annex as a quiet meeting space. Then Adrian spoke without his 12 pages. I created this club because I wanted people to need me, he said. Noah taught me that helping someone is not the same as deciding for them. If the club continues, it should not belong to me. It should belong to every student brave enough to ask for help. Richard stared at his son as if seeing the person beneath the performance for the first time. The board deliberated for 40 minutes. We waited in the hallway. Adrian paced. Felix predicted outcomes. Milo tried to interview Felix about his predictions until Lucas fed both of them cookies. Richard approached us. Adrian, he said, I still disagree with how some requests were handled, but I was wrong about why you built the club, and wrong about Noah. Adrian stopped. It was not a complete repair. Families do not transform in a hallway because one speech lands correctly. But Richard asked to read the new charter. He apologized to me without explaining away his behavior. Adrian did not forgive everything at once, and Richard did not demand it. That was a beginning. The board reinstated us under a magnificent bureaucratic name, the Student Support and Unusual Requests Society. Adrian stared at the new sign. It lacks poetry. It has funding, Julian said. I find it beautiful. My scholarship remained intact. Grant, who had complained about our preferential social influence, received community service hours cataloging 6 years of student organization records. No blood, no revenge campaign. Just 300 dusty binders and the consequences of administrative enthusiasm. Grant stopped smiling by the letter C. By spring, everyone at Hawthorne knew Adrian and I were together. This did not prevent him from planning an event called the Official Public Recognition of Our Private Romance. You already confessed, I said when I discovered flower invoices on his desk. Privately, history deserves documentation. His plan included 200 white roses, a student orchestra, projections on the science building, and a speech Milo estimated at 23 minutes. In my first life, I would have surrendered from fatigue. In this one, I delegated. Lucas redirected the flowers to the graduation ceremony. Julian canceled the projection permit. Felix converted the speech into 6 useful sentences. Milo was permitted 1 camera, which Miss Sloane made him point at the stage rather than my face. What remained was a courtyard gathering beneath paper stars. Sam designed the backdrop, Daniel programmed the lights, and Elliot played violin because he wanted to. Adrian found me beside the empty request box. You dismantled my masterpiece. I optimized it. There were going to be indoor fireworks. There were never going to be indoor fireworks. Not with that attitude. He smiled, but worried his cuff. This was not really about another confession. Adrian had been accepted at Yale, near the future Richard designed. I had been accepted at the University of Washington in Seattle, a city I both missed and feared. For days, we had treated the envelopes like furniture neither of us wished to discuss. I don't want you choosing Seattle because of me, I said, and I don't want you believing distance is proof of maturity. I'm serious. So am I. Adrian produced a campus map marked around Washington's theater program, leadership courses, and 3 well-lit cafes. I visited with my mother. I liked it before I knew you were accepted. I stared at him. You visited Seattle without announcing a state occasion? I am capable of private research. You posted 14 photographs, private by my standards. His humor faded. Yale is an excellent school. It is also the answer my father prepared for me before I knew the question. Washington has the programs I want, the city work I care about, and room for me to build something that isn't inherited. What if we change? I asked. What if college makes us different people? It should. He stepped closer. I don't want you to stay 18 forever. I want the chance to meet every version of you that comes next. The answer moved through me slowly, warm as the lights in Daniel's paper stars. I don't need another confession, I said. I need to know what we'll do when love stops being a school day dream and becomes real life. Adrian took my hand. Then let's build one. And if we discover our plans are wrong, we'll make better plans without pretending love failed. That was the most mature thing he had ever said. Naturally, he ruined it by adding, I have drafted a shared 5-year calendar. Delete it. Revise it. Adrian. I'll reduce the color coding. I pulled him down by his tie and kissed him beneath the paper stars. Our friends remained nearby, but nobody interrupted. Milo lowered his camera. Felix closed his notebook. Lucas offered no food. Julian watched the lights instead of checking a form. They had learned when a moment belonged to us. When Adrian and I parted, he rested his forehead against mine. University of Washington? he asked. Only if it is your choice. It is. Then yes. For once, our future began without an audience demanding a performance. It began with 2 acceptance letters, 1 honest conversation, and his hand warm around mine. Graduation arrived in June beneath an Oregon sky so blue it looked newly painted. Hawthorne's lawn filled with white chairs. Families carried flowers and cameras. The Willamette River flashed between the trees. I stood in my cap and gown outside Miss Sloane's history classroom. The desk where I had awakened waited in the 3rd row. For months, I had thought returning meant recovering something lost. A younger body, an unwasted year, a version of myself untouched by fluorescent offices and polite cruelty. But Noah's life was not a correction of Ethan's. It was not a reward for suffering or for reaching the end of what my body could carry. It was a responsibility to stop confusing survival with living, and to ask for help before silence consumed everything else. I sat at the desk one last time. Adrian leaned in the doorway, graduation cords hanging around his neck. Are you planning another reincarnation? Because I object. You don't control metaphysics. I have contacts. I smiled and held out my hand. He crossed the room and took it. At the ceremony, Sam Rivera received an art scholarship. Daniel Morris won Hawthorne Science Award. Elliot performed with the student orchestra. The people we had helped were not side notes in our story. They had stories carrying them forward. Felix chose psychology at Washington. Lucas pursued culinary arts and a future greenhouse bakery. Milo left for film school in Los Angeles, promising to violate our privacy remotely. Julian headed to Georgetown for public policy, which should concern the federal government. Adrian and I both chose the University of Washington in Seattle. Returning to that city frightened me. Adrian did not tell me not to be afraid. He came with me. Before we left Hawthorne, the club received one last anonymous request. I'm new next year, I'm an Omega, and I'm scared I won't belong. Is there a place for me? I wrote the reply myself. Yes, your chair is already waiting. 4 years later, Adrian planned to propose beside Lake Union with a boat, fireworks, and an aerial banner. Wind canceled everything. We ended up beneath an awning near the water, eating takeout while rain struck the lake in silver rings. This is ruined, he said, staring at the small velvet box. It's raining. You're dramatic. I'm wearing your coat. It seems historically accurate. He laughed, then dropped to one knee on the damp pavement. Noah Bennett, Ethan Miller, Vice President of Common Sense and Destroyer of Unnecessary Speeches, will you marry me? I looked at the man who had stayed beneath a cedar tree, believed an impossible truth, and learned to stand beside me instead of in front. Yes, he opened his mouth, probably to confirm. That means yes, Adrian. He slid the ring onto my finger and kissed me while Seattle rain gathered in our hair. In my first life, I had walked through this city believing every bright window belonged to someone else. Adrian framed my face as dinner cooled and messages arrived from 4 friends who had somehow known our plans. I finally understood. Returning was never about going backward. It was finding the people with whom I no longer had to disappear. Extra story. Married to the drama king. 3 years into our marriage, Adrian declared our kitchen emotionally hostile. I found him standing barefoot in our Seattle townhouse at 7 on a Sunday morning, wearing gray sweatpants and my old Hawthorne sweatshirt. Rain softened the garden windows. The coffee maker blinked innocently on the counter. What happened? I asked. You bought the wrong cereal. I inspected the box. This is the cereal you requested. I requested the one with cinnamon clusters. You texted, and I quote, the blue one that understands me. This blue is emotionally colder. I opened the cabinet and found the cinnamon cereal behind a bag of flour. Lucas left this yesterday. Adrian brightened. I always trusted him. 30 seconds ago you called our kitchen hostile. People grow. He wrapped his arms around my waist from behind while I made tea. His chin settled on my shoulder and his wedding ring clicked softly against mine. Cedar and sleep warmed the air around him. We have nowhere to be today, he murmured. That remained my favorite luxury. Adrian directed community programs for his mother's arts foundation. I worked as a creative director at a small employee-owned agency where ideas kept their authors' names. On difficult days, I still felt Seattle's old shadows. Then I came home to Adrian complaining that I had been gone for several emotional centuries. After breakfast, we walked to Gasworks Park beneath one umbrella. Adrian held it badly, so his right shoulder grew wet. I moved closer, fitting beneath his arm. At the top of the hill, Lake Union shone pewter under the clouds. Planes lifted from the water. Our old university building stood beyond the far shore. "Do you miss Hawthorne?" Adrian asked. "Sometimes. Do you miss being 18? I considered the boy who had awakened at a desk carrying 2 lives. "No," I said. "I like who we became." Adrian kissed my temple. "I was already excellent." "You once spent $600 on club curtains." "Excellent, not financially supervised." That evening, our friends crowded around our dining table. Lucas brought bread. Milo played an embarrassing Hawthorne video. Julian had secured funding for 3 new student support clubs. Felix attempted a toast and became lost in attachment theory. Adrian found my hand beneath the table. Around us, laughter rose against the rain. No grand rescue, no perfect life. Just dinner plates, familiar voices, his thumb moving over my ring, and the deep peace of being expected tomorrow. "Happy?" he asked. I leaned into him. Once no one noticed when I vanished. Now there were shoes by the door and a husband who considered 12 unanswered minutes a historical tragedy. "Very," I said. He kissed me slowly, smiling against my mouth. Outside, Seattle disappeared into rain. Inside, every light was on. If Noah and Adrian's chaotic, tender second chance made you smile, consider following the channel and joining us for the next BL story. Until then, remember what Noah learned. Belonging should never be something you have to earn by disappearing.